Okay. Well, I would like to officially welcome everyone to the Kansas Federation of Republican Women's on the Issues this month. This month, we are delighted to have Tammy Bartles join us. She is actually a member of the KFRW, specifically of Starlight. And you all read her bio, so as you all know, I don't like to spend time rereading bios that you have already read, because she has a lot of important information to talk about tonight, specifically about fighting for the Second Amendment. And so without further ado, I would like to welcome Tammy to the KFRW on the Issues.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you guys for inviting me to come and speak today. Again, my name is Tammy Bartles, and like she said, I don't want to rehash my whole bio there, but I am a firearms instructor. I live in Lawrence, which I always joke I'm behind enemy lines here in Lawrence, but you would be surprised that it is actually not quite as liberal as we're all led to believe. I think it's just the fact that it's a fairly well-to-do college town that gives it that reputation. During the summer, it's a completely different city. So I own Red Brick Road Training, and I teach mostly in Olathe, in Lawrence, and I'm getting ready to start offering some classes in Manhattan. I am also the state director is the corrector. I'm the state director for Women for Gun Rights, which used to be known as the DC Project. Representative Rebecca Schmoy used to be the state director when it was DC Project a couple of years ago, and she had to let the position go when she got elected. And so I'm really excited to count her as a friend. I also serve on the Kansas State Rifle Association. I'm the board secretary and the co-chair of the training committee with Chuck Haggard, who lives in Topeka and is a national level instructor who teaches all over the country. So kind of what I like to share what my background is, so everyone knows that I'm not just like talking out of the side of my head. I used to be very anti-gun. I used to be one of those people that believed nobody needed a gun but the police department. And then I worked for 3 years as the receptionist at the mental health department of Lansing Correctional Facility in maximum security. And then after that, I worked for 13 years in child welfare, the last year as a child abuse investigator. And I saw just like how absolutely horrible people can be. I saw the worst of the worst, and I saw how protective orders don't actually protect you from anything. All they do, they're just a prosecutorial tool that people can use after the fact, after whatever has happened to you has happened to you. So I got thinking, maybe a handgun for personal protection. And then from the time I decided I was okay getting a handgun to the time I actually purchased my first gun was 4 years. And that's because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know where to go. I was like, do I just go to the gun store? Is that allowed? Do I have to make an appointment? What am I looking for? I knew enough to go revolver, semi-automatic, and that was about it. And like a lot of women, I got some really bad advice early on. I worked with a retired police officer who was convinced I needed to get a revolver, and then I got lucky, and I met a young man who was a firearms instructor, took me shooting for the first time, got me down the right path, and kind of got me where I was like, if somebody else wants to learn to protect themselves, I don't want them to have to wait 4 years like I did. I want to do whatever I can to help people get started. And that kind of blossomed into wanting to make sure that people had the right to continue to learn how to protect themselves with the most effective tool out there. And I have a pretty significant advocacy background. I was involved in the Kansas Parent Teacher Association for over a decade on the state board. I actually served 3 years as their state president. I was a registered lobbyist lobbying for public education. So would go and meet with, Governor Brownback and Governor Sebelius and all of them. I actually even got to meet Barack Obama when he visited Lawrence several years ago and have just a one-on-one meeting with him for about 5 minutes. Have a really cool picture. He is as tall as he looks. Doesn't help that I'm very short too. So that's kind of my background. I've got a lot of advocacy background. I became very passionate about firearms and people learning how to protect themselves with them. And so it seemed natural to kind of move into that role of letting or helping make sure that we all have that continued right. And things just kind of progressed. I'll start with, so why does the Second Amendment matter? First of all, we talk about how the Second Amendment protects the First, and we've really seen this attack on our First Amendment rights all across the board. And we've seen what's happening in places like what's happening in England right now, where they took away everyone's guns and now people are being attacked. They're being put in jail for posting mean memes on social media. It's absolutely insane. And the thing that sets us apart here in America is that Second Amendment. And it really helps solidify our personal liberties. And so I think that's really important for everyone to kind of recognize. And then groups like Moms Demand Action and Newtown and Everytown and all of these organizations, Giffords, they're very organized and they're very well funded. And we don't have that in the 2A community. In fact, unfortunately, there's a lot of infighting among the different Second Amendment advocacy organizations. NRA doesn't get along with GOA and all these things. And I would really like to see us get where we're working together instead of working against each other, because they're not working against each other. They are all very coalesced and have a very solid message. This is what we believe. And they've got 4 or 5 talking points, red flag laws, things like that. And they really just hammer that home. And they've got their little stylish shirts. They all show up in their red Moms Demand Action shirts. So they're very organized. So Second Amendment advocacy is important because there are people who are actively working to take those rights away from us, and they are well funded and well organized. And they've learned that being loud and being rude gets them attention. And most of us, we don't tend to be like that, but it's something that we do try to work on. And so I love, I'm wearing my Women for Gun Rights shirt today, and their big motto is educate, not legislate. So you can see it says legislate and it's crossed out and it says educate. And that really spoke to me as well, having the background working with the public school systems. So Women for Gun Rights is a not-for-profit organization. It is nonpartisan, and it was started by Diana Muller, who is a 3-gun shooter. And there are not really chapters, but there are organizations all across the states, and each state has a director. There's some great directors. I know a lot of them, and our main purpose is to educate people about what's going on in the Second Amendment in our particular states. So my focus is on Kansas, upcoming Kansas legislation. One of the things we'll do is organize a Capitol Day where everyone will get people together and we'll go visit our legislators at the state capitol, share with them our talking points, our focuses, things like that. Last year, as a just random person on the street, I put together a advocacy day at the Topeka Public Library, where we had some speakers come in, including Kelvin Curtis, who is the NRA ILA person for our region. People from the KSRA spoke. Rebecca spoke. Chuck Haggard spoke. As a former law enforcement officer, he talked about we get the police department we vote for, which was a really powerful discussion. And then share information. So we have, we'll send out newsletters, both from the national organization at the state level, and to keep people informed and really just encourage them and help them write letters and all kinds of stuff. And we'll talk about in a little bit what you can do to be a 2A advocate. We also go and testify at hearings. if something is going on and we need to go testify. So last year, I didn't get to testify a lot this past session because I just started a new job. But last year I went and testified on the various bills that came through. I testified about Eddie Eagle, where they were trying to get Eddie Eagle out into the school districts to do some education for kids on gun safety, which is really ironic because all of these other organizations are like, yeah, we want kids to be safe around guns. And so we want to teach kids how to be safe around guns, not just make guns disappear. And they actively fought us on that. And it actually ended up being vetoed by the governor and just missed being overridden. So I don't know if that, I have not heard that that one is coming back up, but there are some really big legislative issues that will be coming up soon. Excuse me. So on the same front, the Kansas State Rifle Association is the local association, the state association associated with the NRA. They do a lot of the same sort of things. They do a lot of tracking of legislation, sending out information to help people out, going and testifying, holding events, things like that. So it was a perfect marriage between what I was already doing with KSRA and Women for Gun Rights. And some people will ask, well, why both? Why not one or the other? I think they both matter. What Women for Gun Rights brings to the Second Amendment advocacy is something that a lot of others don't have, and that is the women's voice. And I think as a state association of women, you guys can understand the importance of that. Women have a lot of power when it comes to things like that. And I don't think we always embrace that. If you stop and think of some of the most influential organizations in the country, they were started by women. The PTA was started by a group of women. The MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, which has been hugely successful and around for decades, was started by women. Moms Demand Action, I don't agree with what they are advocating for, but they've embraced that power that women have in the advocacy world. And so I really hope to see more of that as we kind of go forward with things. I did want to share, and if you guys have questions, pop them up as we go along, pop them up in the comments, and we'll try to answer as we go along, and then we'll have question time at the end as well. Kansas State Rifle Association also offers training and support. So some of the things we're looking at doing coming up is doing like shooting events for young people to introduce them to shooting with .22s. I went to, the reason I got involved actually with Starlight, for those of you who don't know, is the NRA ILA, Kelvin, asked me to teach a concealed carry class for the Starlight women at an event they were having. And I taught a concealed carry class for them and got to meet a lot of the ladies. And I'd had some interaction with your organization before. I used to be the director of training at Frontier Justice, and a group had me come in and talk about concealed carry with their group. So it's been it's several years that I've been kind of adjacent to you guys, and I'm really excited to be a member of the group. And I love the chapter meetings and the organization. So if you guys are interested, NRA also hosts a program called Women on Target, which is a program meant to introduce women to shooting. That usually happens near Junction City, Kansas at the end of September. And that's something you can watch out for if you're interested in learning more about shooting in a women's only environment, which is great. They use all female instructors, only women can attend. So that's one of the things that is available. So it's not all just advocacy. A lot of what we do is education as well. So what are our big issues coming up in 2025 session? So the 2025 session starts at the beginning of January. And I hope everyone's ready. I know we've got a lot going on between now and then with the elections, and it's kind of hard to plan what you're going to do when you don't know who you're going to be doing it with. But some things to kind of have on your radar and keep in mind. During the special session that the governor called this year, a couple of bills were introduced, not with the expectation that they were going to pass, but just kind of get them on the radar so that people could start working on them. The first one is a credit card tracking bill. So I don't know if you guys have heard, there have been a law passed recently. I don't think it was a law. I think it was an executive order or something for the merchant category code, where they have created special codes that the credit card companies will use to track gun and ammunition sales. And what this does basically is introduce a illegal backdoor gun tracking registry. And so we're looking at legislation to prevent those credit card companies from tracking our purchases like that. Another one is there has been a bill introduced and being discussed to eliminate sales tax on firearms, accessories, and storage, such as safes. And one of the big things the anti-gun people push for is safe storage. And so one of the things we're doing is pushing for safe gun storage items to be tax-free. Because that helps encourage safe ownership. And as an instructor, I am a absolutionist, but I also believe that a responsible gun owner is going to be well trained. They're going to store their guns safely. I'm a parent, I'm a grandparent. My grandkids are almost 3 years old and just turned 6 months old. And I want to make sure they don't have access to my guns. And it helps people if we can make those items as accessible as possible. And so that's one of the things we'll be looking at again, is eliminating taxes on those items. You're not taxed to take advantage of any other of your constitutional rights. And so why should we be taxed to take advantage of our Second Amendment rights? The third one we're going to be looking at is a bill that says Kansas will not enforce any federal laws that they or enforce any federal laws that they find to be unconstitutional. Now, this will be an interesting one to keep an eye on, because they passed that in Missouri not too long ago. The governor of Missouri actually signed that at Frontier Justice in Lee Summit, Missouri, when I was working there. It was quite a sight to see. But a court just earlier this week, day before yesterday, I believe it was, found that law was not unconstitutional. Not the fact that the state could refuse to help, but that the issue was that they had stated they would refuse to help because they found it unconstitutional. And that judge said basically they don't have the right to make the decision what is constitutional and not. That is like a Supreme Court issue. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens with that legislation and how that impacts any potential legislation in Kansas along the same lines. And then the fourth thing, a real big thing to keep an eye on, is something that was introduced last year and didn't quite make it through, but a constitutional amendment to the Kansas Constitution that would help clarify Section 4. And Section 4 talks about the strict scrutiny test. And what they want to do is make that so that it applies in the historical tradition, which is what the Supreme Court recently said. They recently said that all gun regulations have to be tied back to historical information about when the Constitution was first written. They want to clarify here in Kansas that amendment or that Section 4 also protects not just guns, but ammunition and accessories. Because what we see happen is when they can't get our guns away from us, they start going about other things. They start heavily taxing ammunition. They make magazines over a certain capacity illegal, things like that. So those are the big four things we kind of expect to see going on as far as the Second Amendment goes in the state legislature this coming year. And then Oh, sorry, lost my spot. Some positive things too. Those are the positive things. Some potential negative things for us to keep an eye on. There will most likely be another effort by the anti-gun folks to try to eliminate constitutional carry and specifically campus carry. That is something they have been working hard on. However, I think that more and more states are passing constitutional carry, and each year it's going to get more difficult for them to try to retract that when there's so many other states that are successfully have constitutional carry. And it's really hard to tie that switch back to constitutional carry to any negative outcomes. In fact, most states that enact constitutional carry have lower crime rates than the states that don't. And obviously that doesn't count places with cities like Chicago or New York or Seattle, things like that, that have very strict gun laws. We also expect to see more efforts to pass the universal background check or close the so-called gun show loophole. The gun show loophole doesn't exist. Anyone whose regular business is selling firearms has to run a background check. What we are seeing also is the Biden administration is trying to change the definition of what someone who regularly participates in the business of selling firearms is defined as, and that is currently going through the legal process at the federal level. And so if that decision is made, that may be moot here in the state of Kansas, but that is something that they are going after as well. And then, of course, the unlawful storage of a firearm legislation that they've tried to pass in the past too. And like I said, as an instructor, I am all for safe gun ownership as a grandparent and a parent, but what safe gun ownership is for every person is different. I live by myself in a 2-bedroom apartment in a really nice neighborhood. How I need to safely store my gun is going to look different than, a family of 4 with young children who maybe live in not as nice an area, or even just have young children. What safe storage looks like is very dependent on your individual situation. And so I'm not a proponent of the government telling us who or how to store our guns. Oh, and I think I saw something popped up about a big problem with straw purchases. And that has been something that a lot of places are really trying to crack down on. In fact, I'm aware here in the greater Kansas City area of 4 or 5 gun ranges that were shut down last year by the ATF because of straw purchases. And yeah, that's an education matter. And straw purchases, it gets cloudy sometimes because there are some weird rules. So my son is 23 now, but when my son was 18, as his parent, I could legally purchase a gun and give it to him. He could not purchase a handgun, but I could purchase a handgun and give it to him. Same thing with your spouse. You can buy a gun as a gift for your spouse, unless your spouse is a prohibited gun owner. And so it gets kind of like cloudy in there and what that looks like. But straw purchases are a serious issue, and we don't want dangerous people to get guns. So yeah, that is something, and it's kind of a separate issue from other things, and it's a balancing act. The straw purchases. NSSF, the National Shooting Sports Foundation, has some great resources for gun retailers on how to kind of prevent straw purchases, and it's all free and it's public on their website, and you can go check it out if you're kind of like, what does that look like? What does that entail? So those are kind of the legislative things we see coming up. So big question today, how to be a 2A advocate. And this is really important because it doesn't have to be hard. And I think so many people get intimidated about how to go about it. And they're like, oh, I don't want to make a phone call, or I don't know how to word an email. And it just doesn't have to be that hard. I actually wrote an article on an online gun publication called Primer Peak on how to be a 2A advocate. And I'm happy to send that to anyone who wants to read it. But kind of the big points I'm going to talk about here, some do's and don'ts of being a Second Amendment advocate. First, the do's, or the don'ts, I'm sorry. First, the don'ts. Don't make it a partisan issue. And I know that we are a group of Republican women, but the Second Amendment truly is for everybody. And I have trained people of all sorts of backgrounds, religious backgrounds, races, different belief systems, different sexualities. So don't make it a partisan issue. Because when we start making things too partisan, especially something that doesn't need to be partisan, it can cost us allies, and we need all the allies we can get out there. I tell you, we don't want to alienate our potential allies. And I talk to people, I know instructors who are like, oh, I could never teach a liberal how to shoot a gun because they're my enemy. What I want to tell you is that people change. And I'm a great example of that. I used to be a very liberal person, and I used to be, I will confess, don't hate me for it, but when I turned 18, I registered to vote. I voted for Bill Clinton both times. I voted for Barack Obama both times. I voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. Last year, the last election, I voted for a third party candidate that was very pro Second Amendment, but I absolutely plan to vote for President Trump and Mr. Vance this time. So gun ownership can be a gateway to women in particular becoming more conservative, because everyone wants to feel safe and everyone wants to feel protected, and especially single women, which a lot of more left-leaning women tend to be younger and maybe single, and they may become aware of their own vulnerabilities, and they may look at purchasing a gun like I did for personal protection. And then you get a gun, and maybe women like to learn, and we tend to be more involved in stuff like that. So maybe you start like watching some YouTube videos from gun people and things like that, and you get exposed to some more conservative ideologies. And it can really be eye-opening. I now, honestly, so many times I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I thought that way. I can't believe I felt that way. I can't believe I voted that way. So the second is, if we work really hard not to make the Second Amendment too partisan and we don't alienate potential allies, that can also help grow our movement, our conservative movement, because people really become aware of if they're lying about guns like this, what else are they lying about? And so it's a great little segue. And most importantly, don't make threats. In that article I mentioned, I talk about how when I wrote that was when there was a lot of the groups marching on the capitals in Virginia about the anti-gun stuff, and they're showing up in their kits, and people are making jokes about the Boogaloo Boys and their open carrying and things like that. And I 100% believe in people's rights to do that. But the reason organizations like Guns Demand or Moms Demand Action is so successful is because they're just normal everyday moms. They're soccer moms. They get off, they get out of soccer practice and they go home and they write a letter to their editor and things like that. And we need more women like that in the pro Second Amendment community. And that's one of the things I really push on my social media is I'm just a normal person. I posted a picture a couple of months ago where I'm holding my newborn grandson, and I'm like, there's a Ruger LCR in this picture somewhere. Just kind of normalize that. And so we don't want to be loud, and we don't want to be making threats, and we don't want to, be unprofessional. So some do's. The first thing we want to do is research the topic. You don't want to go in with false information or really exaggerated information. You want to be well informed about what you're going to talk about. The next thing is vote. Voting is the single most important thing we can do. And it's really important, and I'm sure you guys are aware too, that it's important, especially during the primaries, that you look at people's voting records. Because it is not if they've been in any sort of elected position before, because it is not uncommon for someone with more liberal leaning views to run as a Republican in a heavily Republican area to try to get into that position, and then they flip flop and are voting against the best interest. But also, in some areas, you may be able to support a Democrat who maybe has more moderate beliefs. A great example is Representative Robinson, who was very instrumental last session in overturning some of the governor's important vetoes to protect children, things like that. Unfortunately, I don't know if you all heard, he recently passed away from pancreatic cancer, which is very sad. But he is also a great example of someone that a potential ally on certain issues. And it's really important that we keep our minds open to that. But voting, get out and vote. One of the things we're going to be working on at Kansas Women for Gun Rights is trying to engage some of the hunters in our area. Kansas has a rich and diverse hunting background, and a lot of people hunt here. We've got some great hunting lands. We still have a lot of public hunting lands, which many states do not have anymore. But it is estimated that there are hundreds of thousands of hunters across the country who are not registered to vote. They seem to think that gun issues are that's not my problem. They'll never take away my right to hunt. But the fact is they could. And so one of the things I'm going to be working on is trying to engage some more hunters in the legislative process. Maintain a professional demeanor. And again, that goes back to that, don't make threats. That's really important. Something I like for people to think about is a lot of times people in the legislature, people are elected representatives, come from some sort of business background. They're bankers, they're business owners, they are professionals. And so if you go to them as a professional yourself and speak to them on the same level, they're going to listen to you as opposed to showing up and making demands. So try to be professional. And it doesn't mean you have to be someone that you're not. But if you go visit them at their office, dress appropriately, speak well, know what your topic is, be polite, all of those sorts of things. Contact and get to know your legislative representatives. That is super important. That's one of the most important things you can do out there is have them familiar with your name. And I'm sure as an organization like Kansas Federation for Republican Women, that's important for you guys on a lot of different topics. So get out there and meet them and get to know them. And then finally, personal emails and calls are by far it's thundering here. We might get some rain. Personal emails and calls are the best way to reach out to people. And I don't know if you guys belong to different groups, they'll send out the email and it'll be like, click here to fill out the form and send it in. If the option is clicking that form and filling that out and nothing, click that form and fill it out. It is something. But if you can send a personal email, make a personal phone call, that's going to have the most impact. When I was with PTA and would go and lobby at the state house, I've had a couple of representatives tell me that, we get that form letter from NRA and we get 50 of them, but we just count it as one letter because it's all from the NRA. So I don't think everyone does that, but that is something some of them do, especially if it is a topic that they hold a different position than you do. So kind of just be aware of that. Your contact may not count as an individual contact if it's on one of those form letters. So then how do you do that? Then how do you reach people? When you make contact, the first and most important thing you can do is just introduce yourself. Give them your name, give them your zip code so that you establish the fact that you are a constituent, because they get contacted from people who aren't necessarily a constituent. But if you are someone who could vote for them in the future, that your voice matters more to them than just any person who calls. So the first thing you want to do, introduce yourself and establish yourself as one of their constituents. The second thing is explain why you're calling. Keep it simple, keep it succinct. Hey, I'm calling you today about House Bill 307. If you know the bill number, give them the bill number. There's a chance that you will not be actually speaking to your representative. You may be speaking to an aide or an assistant, a secretary. I know some of the junior legislators, they share someone who answers their phones. So make sure you give the bill number if you are aware of what it is. State if you support or don't support that particular position or bill, and tell them why you support it. I support this because, or I don't support this because this negative thing will happen to me and my friends or me and my neighbors, things like that. And then ask them specifically to support the position you support. And that ask is super important. I'm going to have an ask for you guys at the end of our session here. So make sure you ask them to support the same position you support. And maybe just briefly reiterate why you feel that way. And then finally, share any closing thoughts you have. Thank them for their willingness to serve, because not everyone is willing to put themselves through the whole election process and be at the Capitol every day to represent us. So thank them for their service, and then get off the phone. Keep it simple. It doesn't have to be crazy. If you ever, like anyone in this group, you're like, oh my gosh, I want to try that, but I don't know. Give me a call. I'm happy to kind of talk you through what that process is, let you practice on me, anything. So those are kind of how to make the contact. And so finally, before we take some questions, I want to say why it should matter to the Kansas Federation of Republican Women. And I shared that a little bit already, that possibility that Second Amendment advocacy can help transform someone into someone more conservative and willing to vote the way we all want to vote, things like that. A 2022 study showed that 48% of Republicans, 32% of independents, and 20% of Democrats live in a home with a gun. That's a lot of people. And we know that single issue voting is a big thing. We see that with the abortion issue. The left has really taken that as their issue and run with it. But the fact is that issue really impacts a very small percentage of the country's population. However, the Second Amendment impacts everyone. Everyone can buy a gun. Everyone can learn to protect themselves. Everyone has that right. And so this is a great opportunity. Getting involved in Second Amendment advocacy can help build the ranks of your organization or our organization, since I'm a member as well. So those are kind of some things. And then I want to finish with an ask. And then if anyone has any questions, we can talk about them. My first ask is, if you are watching, so I invited a bunch of my friends. I shared that I was going to be speaking. And so if any of my friends are on here who are not members of the Kansas Federation of Republican Women, I want to encourage you to join. The membership is not super expensive. You get some great resources, some great opportunities. I've met some amazing women. So I really, if you are watching and you are not a member of that, I really encourage you to join KFRA or KFRW first. Second, if you are someone who cares about the Second Amendment, I encourage you to join the Kansas State Rifle Association. They also have a very minimal membership fee. And you get a lot of information. You get emails, updates. You can attend the annual banquet where we have a lot of wonderful speakers. We have a lot of wonderful Republican speakers, especially because conservatives tend to be more supportive of the of gun rights. And then finally, I encourage all of you to, guys included, because men are welcome, to sign up as a member of Women for Gun Rights. And that is free. There is no fee to join that. We do a lot of fundraisers. In fact, they're having a great fundraiser right now for a rifle. I'll be sharing information about that on the website or on our Facebook page. Information is on their website. So consider joining that, signing up, being a part of our group and adding voices. And that's the most important thing. Even if you don't want to get involved, if you're like, oh my gosh, I can't do that. If you can join these organizations, the more members we have, the more powerful our voice is. When I was the president of Kansas PTA, I would be able to go and sit in front of these elected representatives and I am here representing the 35,000 members of Kansas PTA here speaking to you. And so that helps the ladies and the gentlemen in KSRA. When we are engaging other people, it helps us to be able to say, we have this many members. And if you go look at organizations like Moms Demand Action, they talk a lot about the number of members they have. And so I really encourage you, support each other. We could be the start of the different organizations getting along better and working together to protect our rights as opposed to fighting each other. And then finally, ladies, specifically, this is a ladies only thing, but on Women for Gun Rights website, they have a section called Tell Us Your Story. And if you have a story about your journey into becoming a gun owner or something that happened to you, we are really trying to build a repository of stories. And so my story that I shared earlier about being anti-gun and then working in child welfare and changing my mind, I have shared that story. You can share your story written or video or both. And that gives us something. We can share those stories without your name. We can share those stories with the media to kind of highlight why gun ownership is so important. And I don't remember who it was. And if you're on this, I hope I tell your story right. But when I gave that presentation at the Republican Women's Group at Frontier Justice several years ago, one of the women in attendance was telling me, or telling the group, how she was at the Walmart there in Wyandotte County by the Legends, and she was grocery shopping, and her purse with her gun in it was sitting in the shopping cart, and she was in the meat aisle, and some guy was talking to her and asking, yes, Cynthia, gun rights are women's rights, exactly, but some guy was talking to her and asking her about the different cuts of chicken and what they were, and she got this weird feeling, and she turned around and looked, and another guy was getting into her purse, and she assumed he was trying to steal her wallet or something, because why would he think there was a gun in there? But it's, those are the kind of stories we want women to share. Or if you are familiar with, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. There's a woman who wrote a book, and I will, anyone who wants to know what it is, I will let you know. But she wrote a book how she was a licensed concealed carry person, but in Tennessee at the time, you could not carry a gun into a bar. And so her and her husband used to run karaoke things, and she had to leave her legally owned concealed carry gun locked in the trunk of their car when they went into this bar. And she had a stalker, and the stalker came into the bar, and surprise, he did not pay attention to the no guns in bars rule, and he shot and killed her husband in front of her. Her name is Nikki. I will get that for you guys. I apologize. But those are the kinds of stories we're looking for. If you have a story that you're willing to share with us, go to Women for Gun Rights website. It's just womenforgunrights.org, and share your story, and get involved. So that's kind of my spiel, and it looks like we've got about 10 minutes left for questions. So what kind of questions do you guys have? Anything? I really appreciate your time today and inviting me on, and I hope everyone learned something. I know I tried to put a lot of information in a short amount of time, but
and I can confirm that she teaches a mean concealed carry class, because I took it and she does an outstanding job. So
well,
I know there's our members all across the state. So if she can't do it, she could probably hook you up with somebody who could teach either your individual clubs or just a group of women. It doesn't have to be KFRW women. Teach the concealed carry. It's just one Saturday, and she makes it really fun with great PowerPoint. So I can vouch for her.
Thank you. So Julie, what part of the state are you in? Where can you take shotgun lessons? What part of the state are you in? Oh, wait, but so shotgun's a little bit harder. Most indoor range, Spring Hill. Oh, cool, fairly close. So a lot of indoor ranges don't allow shotguns for obvious reasons. I know the range here in Lawrence allows shotguns, but not slugs because of the type of berm they have. Whereas Frontier Justice in Kansas City only allows slugs. Not a lot of people are doing shotgun training, but I will tell you, Powder Creek probably has some shotgun classes. I know Dave Miller with Miller Shooting Sports. He is a world record clay shooter. He teaches classes out at Powder Creek. So that's a good place to get started, is Powder Creek. Chuck Haggard and I are going to start teaching classes soon at a range north of Manhattan, which is really exciting because that range also, they have camps every summer for kids in for teens in foster care. And so all of the training, all of the money the range makes goes to support that program, those camps for foster teens. So that's really cool. But definitely, Julie, start with Powder Creek. Thank you, whoever popped that up. But look at Miller Shooting Sports. Dave Miller's a friend of mine. He is a great instructor. And he teaches like trap and clay. He teaches a lot of the coaches for the high school trap teams in the area. And he's just over the state line in Missouri. Anyone else? They're shy group today. Well, if you think of anything, you are more than welcome to, you guys are more than welcome to share my contact information. My website is RBR, so like Red Brick Road, RBR training. And I'm reading real quick, sorry. Oh, so yeah, let me bring that back up. Where'd it go? There we go. So I don't know if you guys are looking at the comments, but it says a young male coworker, very anti-firearms, invited him to go shooting over a lunch hour. He decided he would like to learn about guns and gun safety for his family protection. He had a great time. Yeah, so I see that a lot. And I have had people come to my classes and they're like, I got to be honest with you, I am very anti-gun, but I feel like if I'm going to talk about something, I should know the truth about it. And by the time class was over, he's like, oh my gosh, this was so fun. I am going to buy a gun. Yes, Women on Target, September 28th. Oh, so there's Women on Target in Missouri, and there's one in Kansas as well. So check those out. Those are great programs. B.O.W, the Kansas Department of Parks and Wildlife, has a program called B.O.W, B-O-W, Becoming an Outdoor Woman. And it's not just gun stuff. So Megan Hilbush, who is the Kansas State Rifle Association Executive Director, and she is a championship rifle shooter. She is teaching a rifle class at this year's B.O.W in the fall. They do it twice a year, in the spring and the fall. The fall is sold out. I'm teaching handguns. There's a shotgun class. There are classes on paddle boarding and stream ecology and Dutch oven cooking. So that's a great program to check out. Department of Parks and Wildlife has some great information as well. Julie, what are you saying? Oh, I'm sorry, Julie, if you want to sign up for B.O.W is excellent. I love that. Yeah, definitely sign up for B.O.W, and they have scholarships available. Usually the spring session is at the end of April, and it goes on sale, I'm going to say mid-February. If you're on Facebook, you can follow the Department of Parks of Wildlife and Parks, and they post when that becomes available. So yeah, lots of opportunities out there to get involved. And you guys, I got distracted reading. My website is rbrtraining.com. My email is just tammybartles@gmail.com. You're welcome to email me. Since I'm going to post this, I'm not going to put my phone number out there, but it is on my website as well. And yeah, if you want to follow me on social media, I'm just Tammy Bartles on Facebook. It's just me in a ball cap. And then on Instagram, it is goodgirlwithagun. So yeah, and feel free to reach out to me, however, email, shoot me a text. I am happy to help anyone. And thank you, Deborah. And thank you guys for everything you do. I really appreciate how welcoming the Starlight has been, especially. They kind of adopted me since there is no Republican women's organization in Douglas County, Kansas. I don't know why. Maybe someday we'll work on that. But thank you guys. You have been wonderful, and I love being a part of the group.
Tammy, what is your favorite handgun?
So that's a tricky question. So I normally carry a Glock 48 with a Hollow Sun 501c3 on it. The things I like about the 48 is it's a full-size gun, but it's narrower. But so oddly enough, I have my friend Chuck that I mentioned. He is going to be on a podcast tonight with several women for primary and secondary, and they are talking about women's gun myths, which is exciting. So I'm going to hop on and watch that when we're done here. But the fact is that women can shoot any gun. I have taught women whose hands were big enough they could palm a basketball, and they're going to be able to shoot different guns than I can with my little, I joke, T-Rex hands. But so I carry a Glock 48. But probably, honestly, my favorite gun, and I hate to say this, but a Ruger LCR, a revolver in 357 Magnum 38 Special. That is what I prefer to carry. Most of the time, again, I live in a pretty nice area and I'm not out looking for trouble. So those, and really it's a very personal decision. And I really encourage people to shoot a lot. I shot 20 guns before I bought my first handgun because I wanted to make sure I made the right decision. But there are some great ones. Walther makes a PDP-F, which was specially designed for people with smaller hands. It was Tatiana Whitlock, who is probably the most famous female firearms instructor out there, helped with the design of that, and the trigger is set a little further back so that women don't have to reach as far. It's a little more narrow. There are some great options out there. But yes, I tend to be a Glock girl and then a Ruger revolver girl.
And one other thing, I remember you telling us during the concealed carry class that now that you've taken this, you're going to watch movies and TV shows and say, that's not how you're supposed to hold a gun. And it's true.
It is. It ruins everything.
It does.
So my ex-husband was a firefighter, and it was the same thing. Like, we would watch a movie like Backdraft, and he's like, that's not how that works. And I'm like, oh, goodness. Yeah, Kim, check out Walther. They have a lot of really good products, and Tatiana is an amazing woman, and she's very involved in their R&D.
All right. Are there any other questions for Tammy? All right, Tammy, thank you so very much for taking the time to speak to us and such. And we'll put the recording also in our newsletter, so the ladies that already had events tonight can be able to watch this. And yes, it is a very important topic, like Deborah said. It's so important, as we know. Like I put in the invite, the left has declared war against the Constitution, and I think that the Second Amendment, outside of free speech, are the two main topics of what they want to destroy. And, we've got to stand strong. We have to fight for our Second Amendment because, as she stated, and actually Elon Musk just tweeted today, and I actually screenshotted it, and I was going to bring it up, but it said, he said that the First Amendment is only safe because of the Second Amendment. And it's true. And it's true.
Cool.
So, well, ladies, yes, thank you, Tammy, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Dennis, good to see you tonight. And so don't forget that you should have received the invite for our state meeting. That is